Today we're going to build our first Apple Watch app. This is going to be, it's going to be shockingly easy to do because we now have SwiftUI. As mentioned, before SwiftUI, building Apple Watch apps was a real challenge. It was basically a neutered version of storyboards and building things using Swift in the old-fashioned way. Now SwiftUI is actually surprisingly powerful on Apple Watch. It almost feels like SwiftUI was built primarily to make Apple Watch apps easier to build. And so we're going to go ahead and do our first one. What I'm going to do is take the tip calculator app that we've been kind of experimenting with and port it to Apple Watch. So I'm starting a brand new project. Specifically, you can see a single view app here is what it defaults to, but today we're going to be doing something new. We're going to be working in watchOS. So I'm going to make an Apple Watch app. Now I can make a standalone Apple Watch app here. I'm going to go ahead and build one that's paired to an iOS app. This is the most common process up until this point. This might change in the future, but usually how Apple Watch apps are distributed is that they're an extension of an existing app that you might already have on your phone. So I'm going to take that and use that as my starting point and build it. I'm going to give it a good name. Make sure that user interface is set to SwiftUI here. Also, I'm going to go ahead and include a complication because we might circle back in the future and build out a complication as well. And we'll hit next. And build it. And you see that this is a lot more complicated than you're used to seeing over here on the side. This includes everything that's related to the iPhone app, as well as down here, this is everything that's related to the Apple Watch app. And so you can see that this, it's hard to read because my screen's been shrunk, but you can see this is the WatchKit extension. So this is the normal app itself, and then this is the WatchKit component down here. It has a bunch of extra stuff. So you saw I had turned on notification stuff, so I can kind of customize what notifications look like from this app, and complications, which is the little Apple Watch kind of home screen view where you can design what it looks like as little complications inside the watch face. We're going to primarily look at content view right here, though. This is the main kind of if you ran the app type deal. I'm going to kind of shuffle some things around so we have some more room. And this is all content views are just like content views on iPhone, which is just SwiftUI. So I'm going to hit resume here. All right, gang. So for some reason, the little preview thing built into Xcode is not working for me today. I'm probably missing a download or some other kind of major or minor issue. So what I'm just going to do is run it inside of the simulator. And the important thing here when you run it inside the simulator is make sure that this up here is selecting the Apple Watch app. And what it'll do is when you hit play, it'll run a little, instead of a little simulated iPhone, it'll run a little simulated Apple Watch. And this Apple Watch is fully functional, just like the little simulated iPhone. So if you wanted to, like, for instance, see what time it was, you can hit the little home button and go back to the clock. You can click and hold on it, and you can customize the clock. So you can put different complications in different spots and that kind of thing. And say, I don't want the battery, I want some other kind of thing to be there, blah, 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 blah. But, whoops, sorry, Siri. But what matters here is that you just handled SwiftUI. So we're going to go ahead and build this sucker out. So I don't want this to say hello world. What I'm going to do is go and grab my code from my tip calculator that we built weeks ago in SwiftUI, and you can see it all here. And I'm going to port this code over to Apple Watch. Now there's a handful of things that we're doing inside this code that can't be done on Apple Watch because they're iPhone specific. For instance, segmented controls don't exist inside of Apple Watch, and so we can't have our picker be displayed as a segmented control. We're also going to look at a problem with keyboards because in Apple Watch there's no such thing as a keyboard. And so we'll do some other kind of modifications here to get this to work. But what I'm just going to do is just copy and paste this all the contents of this content view into the content view of my Apple Watch, and I'll show you how to port it. The good news is that when you do this, it will very quickly show you what's not supported in watchOS versus what was. So for instance, we had wrapped everything inside of this app inside of a navigation view. Navigation views in this way are not supported inside of Apple Watch, so I just got to delete the navigation view, delete the extra curly bracket at the end of it, and now we've removed that error message. And so now we'll move on to the next error message. Okay, so what's the next thing that we have? It's not wild about these forms, so I'm just going to get rid of the form inside of the VStack. And let's see what our next error message is. And you basically keep on working through these error messages. So for instance, here it's giving me an error. It doesn't like the picker style stuff. So I'm going to get rid of the picker so that it can't become a segment of control. It's just a normal picker. And it'll keep on keeping on and cranking through a handful of error messages. So let's see what else it doesn't like. What else don't you like? Oh, text fields. Text fields can't have keyboards in. Let's put you away. Text fields can't have keyboards on Apple Watch because there's no such concept of a keyboard. So we're going to get rid of the keyboard stuff. And basically we work through each one of these things until we no longer get error messages. Hit go and see what it looks like. And right out of the gate, those simple changes will get us something. It might not be what we want, but it'll give us something. So we can see here that right out of the gate, I can put in a bill. So unfortunately, the bill doesn't have a keyboard. And so, I could do something as silly as put an emoji into a bill, and that's going to cause all kinds of problems. So you can see total bill is that. There's some problems with this method. Or I can record some audio. It's not working. I could, in theory, record some audio, and Siri is crashed, right? I can do all kinds of stuff. So the problem with this input device of using text field is that it's really designed for things like texts and short kind of messages like that on Apple Watch. And so I'm going to get rid of the text field and not have the text field be I'm not going to allow the user to input the total bill using text field. We're going to input the total bill using something different. So I'm going to get rid of this right now. But I am going to say check amount and want that check amount to be displayed in the bill. So up here, it's going to say bill amount. Get rid of that. So that once users start putting in a bill amount, then it'll give me something. Now, I'm inside of this VStack and I have one section here. And really when I think about it, what I want to do is have like a calculator style input. So you have a series of buttons, 1, 2, 3 across one row, and then the next row is 4, 5, 6, and then the next row is like the decimal indicator, and the next row is the 0, and then that kind of thing. It's just kind of make it look like a calculator. So I'm going to do that using buttons inside of an H stack, because an H stack is a horizontal stack of stuff. And so I'm going to go ahead and put in an H stack here. And then inside of that H stack, I'm going to put a series of buttons. And we'll have this one be the 1 button, etc. So I'll run that. And you can see now I have 1, 2, 3. 3 little buttons inside of my H stack. Awesome. And what I want to do is make it so when you tap the 1 button, it adds a 1 to the check amount. Now the good news is that check amount isn't an actual number. If you'll recall, check amount is a string. And so I don't actually have to do any math here when I do 1, 2, 3. I'm literally just adding a 1 to the string of check amount. And so what I'm just going to say is in the action of this button, so when you tap this button, I want to take check amount and take what it was, check amount, and add a 1 to it. And not the actual number 1, but the string 1 to it. Now remember that up in here, we'll convert the string check amount into an actual number so we can do math with it. But for now, it's just a string check amount. It's going to give me an error message. That's because check amount is outside of this button. And so I need to just make sure that it properly references things. It's going to be another error message in the next one. Yep, self needs to be added as well to there. And so now when I hit 1, it will add 1 to the check amount, which is cool. So the bill is 1. If I hit it again, 11. Hit it again, 111. Awesome, it's working. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing to 2 and then 3. Now, as you know, I am a huge proponent of the check early and often lifestyle when it comes to coding. And so we've now done 3 buttons. Let's check, make sure they all work. So you say 1, 2, 3. Excellent. So if you're typing in the bill, you can get easy access to it. This is working great. Okay, so I'm super happy so far. You can see the number of people and tip amount, and these pickers are super wonky. We'll fix those in a little bit. Right now, I just want to make sure that my kind of calculator style input device for the tip amount works. So I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing again, only this time I'm going to take this entire H stack, copy it, paste it, and so now instead of having 1, 2, 3, it's 4, 5, 6. The next row in my series of buttons will then be 7, 8, 8, 9. And the last row in my series of buttons will be the decimal point, a 0, and then like a delete button so you can go back in what's been typed. So I'm going to display that as a back arrow. But we need to do some code here because right now we're just adding things to the check amount. What I wanted to do is delete the last thing that the user had inputted. And so really when you think about it, since the check amount is a string, all I needed to be able to do is learn how do I remove something at the end of a string. The last thing the user had typed in is basically what we're going to get rid of. And so that's actually quite simple. There's a way that we can modify strings, and that's called drop last. And so what I'm going to do is inside of this code, instead of adding 3 to check amount, I'm going to take check amount and replace it with check amount, only the drop last version. So in other words, drop the last thing that had been inputted into check amount. So the last thing in the string. It's going to give me an error message just because drop last doesn't technically generate a string. So I just need to fix that by adding a string command to drop last. And now everything should work. So let's check it. So it's hard for me to see everything because it's all inside of this little dealio. But 4, 5, 6, it's hard to see anything. So please hold while I get that fixed. All right, so I realized the problem, and that is just like we have navigation views inside of iOS that wrap around the entire screens, we need to wrap all of this stuff inside of a scroll view so the user can scroll around on this. So I'm going to go here and hit add a new scroll view. Right there. And the scroll view will wrap the entire view that we're coding. So I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom. And so now we can scroll around. And I'm using my scroll wheel on my computer to scroll. Okay, so let's go ahead and check out our bill amount. So if I want to say the bill is $12.50, that works great. What if I made a mistake and it was 59 cents? I can hit the back button. And now it's $12.59. Awesome. So we have a kind of functioning app here. We haven't done any of the kind of picker stuff around number of people at the party, and we haven't done all the stuff around percentage of how much tip you want to give the user and that kind of stuff. But I want you to kind of get to this point where we have kind of this funny little calculator thing that's built in, a couple gotchas. Make sure you're not wrapping this stuff inside of a form. If you do, then a lot of these buttons won't behave as you would expect. So keep everything outside of a form. And then we'll circle back and do all the picker stuff in the next video.